Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So it's December 13th, 2021, Hillsborough, North Carolina, reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 30, Text 21. Aruyaika padakramya Sirasyaha param nripa Dustahe gacha jatoham Kalanam nanu danda-krt. Aruya, rising up, Eka, one of the gopis, Pada, with her foot, Akramya, climbing above, Shirashi, the head, Aha, said, Aparam, to another, Nripa, O King Parikshit, Dushta, wicked, Ahe, O snake, Gacha, go away, Jataha, have taken birth, Aham, I, Kalanam, on those who are envious, Nanu, indeed, Danda, of punishment, Krit, as the imposer. BBT translations. Sukadeva Goswami continued, O king, one gopi climbed on another's shoulders and, putting her foot on the other's head, said, Go away from here, O wicked snake. You should know that I have taken birth in this world just to punish the envious. BBT purport, here the gopis enact Krishna's chastisement of Kaliya. So we're going to read Jiva Goswami's Tika, which is very short. Putting one foot on the head of another gopi, she spoke. Nanu indicates certainty or calling out. Sometimes the word nripa is inserted. This indicates astonishment. Dustahe means a wicked snake. Leave this place or else I will punish you. Nana means certainly. Though in the actual pastime, Krishna did not say this. The gopi said this as a conclusion or to explain the meaning of the pastime. Aruyaika padakramya sirasya yaha param nripa dushtahe gachajatoham kalanam nanu danda-krt. Sukadeva Goswami continued, O king, one gopi climbed on another's shoulders and putting her foot on the other's head, said, Go away from here, O wicked snake. You should know that I have taken birth in this world just to punish the envious. So here the gopis are so involved in Krishna consciousness, in consciousness of Krishna, that they are absorbed in the oneness of Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. That they are absorbed in feeling that they are Krishna. Of course, we don't generally emphasize this in our International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We don't generally emphasize the oneness, we generally emphasize the difference. So why is that? Yeah, particularly in what sense would people get confused at this point in history? Yes, because Prabhupada came to Prabhupada came to eradicate impersonalism and voidism, and therefore, although our philosophy is Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, we don't, although we're in the Madhva Sampradaya, we don't ascribe to Madhva's absolute dualism. Our emphasis in our society is always on the difference. We all pretty much always emphasize the difference. But the oneness is also there. We're not absolute dualists. And there is simultaneously and inconceivably complete oneness between the jiva and the Lord, and complete difference between the jiva and the Lord. One devotee recently asked me, he said, why is it that God cannot make us God? Or why cannot God make himself a jiva? I said, he does. That's the oneness. I said we have a Shaktivesh avatar. It's a jiva who's empowered as God. And the jiva is the Vivinamsa expansion of the Lord. The jiva is the incarnation of the Lord as the smallest of the smallest. So there is a oneness of the soul and God. And we find sometimes the devotees take on this mood of feeling that they're one with God. It's interesting that one of the liberations is to have all the powers of God, Sharsti. Another is to have a form practically like God. Because Krishna is not envious. He is willing to share his power with the living entity. And several places where Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would say that the ideal enjoyment is we enjoy through Krishna. And we feel this oneness with Krishna. At the same time, we are absolutely different. If we weren't absolutely different, we couldn't fall into Maya. God cannot fall into Maya. So that is the evidence that we are absolutely different. And interestingly enough, once we decide that we want to enjoy separately from Krishna, then we're not able to access this power of God anymore. You know, the soul thinks, well, if I can access all the power and the opulence of God, why do it through God? Why not do it independently? It's kind of like Jesus talks about the prodigal son. You know, the rich man's son who decides, I'm going to take my inheritance and spend it independently, at which point he wastes it all and comes crawling back saying, never mind my being a son, I'll just be a servant. But this concept that when we're serving Krishna, we enjoy equally as Krishna, to the point that the servant can fully identify with the master. There's another example in the Bhagavatam of a devotee in this Unmada ecstasy who considered that he was one with Krishna. What other? It's Prahlad Maharaj. So it's explained, Prahlad Maharaj, sometimes he would go into an ecstatic trance where he would feel this absolute oneness with Krishna. We find this also in Brihad Bhagavatamrita when Gopakumar goes to the planet of the Jnanis. And there is the only place where he doesn't see Krishna personally, because all the Jnanis are absorbed in meditation. They're seeing Krishna within the heart. They're not seeing Krishna face to face. And so he's feeling a lot of separation from Krishna. And then the four Kumaras start manifesting themselves the forms of the Lord, because they're also able to access this absolute oneness. I mean, this concept that I want to be God, Krishna is saying, yes, you can experience everything of God if you love me. The only thing the jiva cannot experience is all the opulence and the power of God separately from God. That's the only thing we can't experience. But everything else that Krishna experiences, we can experience through him. When we love him. Just like even in ordinary life, the head of a country may deputize someone to have the full powers of the president of the prime minister, isn't it? Like they can deputize an ambassador, or they can deputize even an ordinary citizen can be deputized to have the full power of the government. Right? There's in the Bible the story of Esther. So the king Xerxes or Ahasuerus, he deputizes Haman and later Mordecai with the full power of the government. So he gives them his ring, and they can make a law and seal it with his ring, and then they have the power as if they were the king. However, when Haman acts in such a way to use the king's power against the queen, and then the king removes his power. So this is, God can give us the full power of God, but he can also remove it, whereas no one can remove the power of God from God. Does this make sense? We have this. So the gopis are absorbed in this oneness and madness where they actually feel like they're Krishna, and therefore we see here one gopi's putting her feet on the head of another gopi. Now normally devotees don't put their feet on the head of other devotees. Also, of course, we know that devotees on this platform, they're above the regulated principles. That doesn't mean that they're having, illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. It doesn't mean like that. But it means they don't have to follow the ordinary rules of Vaidhi Bhakti. And so therefore they can do something like this, put their head on the feet of another, put their foot on the head of another devotee. Please don't try this at home, not advised. But in this mood that I'm Krishna and you're Kaliya, they're doing like this. And what I thought was particularly interesting, as the Jiva Goswami says, this gopi's expanding the Leela. She's adding something. She's adding some dialogue in her total absorption and identification with Krishna that Krishna didn't actually say. As she's expanding it. So I was thinking that we could meditate a little bit today on this, how we expand. We can say that, like, there's the original 4 verses of the Bhagavatam that Krishna spoke to Lord Brahma, and then this is expanded by all the acharyas. Right? We have within the Bhagavatam, there's nested conversations and conversations and conversations and conversations. And this is expanded. We say Sukadeva Goswami is like a parrot. But he's not just a parrot. He's also adding his own understandings and his own realizations. And then the acharyas are doing that in their own commentary. Srila Prabhupada is expanding the Bhagavatam with his purports. We're all doing that whenever we speak on the Bhagavatam. We're also expanding. And this is part of the meditation on Krishna's Leela. So I was thinking about this absorption in Krishna, and this expansion of Krishna takes place on different levels. So it takes place on an intellectual, philosophical level. It takes place on the level of emotions and desires. But both of those can be still on the platform of the mind and the intelligence in this world. Like it's explained in the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam, that meditation is done using the mind. One uses the mind, Lord Kapila says, as a hook. I think it's in 3:34-28, but I'm not sure. Maybe 3:20, 3:24. Didn't look that up, sorry. So Lord Kapila says one uses the mind as a hook to capture the Lord. But at a certain point, this subtle body dissolves, and one's absorption is no longer on the platform of the mind, of the thinking, feeling, willing of the mind. But the absorption of the gopis, as was discussed yesterday, is a vyavichari bhav. It's a sanchari bhav. It's not something within the material sphere at all. So there are these different levels of absorption. Obviously, we can be absorbed on the platform of the gross body. We can be absorbed on the platform of the mind in terms of thinking, feeling, and willing. And we can be absorbed on the platform of the soul. And in any of these cases, our absorption acts as an expansion. So when we get absorbed in the pastimes of the Lord on the physical platform, then we do things like we improve the temple building. We put in a new floor, we put in new ledges. If you find the verse number, please let me know. If you look in 3rd canto, hook, I think you'll find it easily. Right? We beautify the property. Do you understand? We take things, we make more outfits for the deities. On the platform of the physical body, we're expanding the pastimes of the Lord. We make things more beautiful. We expand them. We get more land. We build more buildings. So we're expanding, and we're hopefully absorbed. You know, and there's a difference. Like, my guess is that when we're hiring people, like we hire Chris or Anthony or whatever, that they don't have that same absorption, is my guess. I mean, maybe they do, but I don't think so. You know, even if Chris is thinking, well, how can I make the ledges look really nice? He's thinking that in terms of, I'm proud of my craftsmanship. Not so much that I want to expand the glories of the Lord. I mean, maybe he is, but I don't think so. Because if we stop paying him, he wouldn't have, his interest wouldn't be there anymore. I mean, sometimes we may have to pay devotees for something, but they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because they want to expand the glories of the Lord. Does this make sense? That's their mood. You know, we may have to give someone a compensation. We may have to give them a room or prasadam or even some money. But their desire is just to expand the glories of the Lord. And then we do it mentally, philosophically. Like we'll read the pastimes of Kaliya or read the pastimes with the gopis, and we'll say, oh, there's also this statement over here in the Bhagavatam, and there's this statement here in the Bhagavad Gita, and there's this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and this acharya says this, and this acharya says that. And we go deeper and we mind it, and again we expand it. We show different connections or different realizations. Right? We have our own personal epiphanies. I was just speaking the other day to Sri Arjuna, and he was saying how he was talking to somebody, and he was saying, this verse of the Shikshastika really is wonderful. And the person he was talking to says, well, this is my favorite verse of the Shikshastika. And he said, oh, that person has a different favorite verse than I have. Right? Each person has their own realizations, their own expansion, their own understanding. And so on a philosophical level, things can expand unlimitedly. We can have unlimited on this one verse, even with a tiny purport. I was thinking if we were to go into the Kaliya pastime, we could talk about the details of the Kaliya pastime. It's explained again in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. It's explained a little differently than it's explained in the Bhagavatam and in the Gopal Champu and in the Ananda Vrindavan Champu. And then if we look at the tikas of the acharyas in the Bhagavatam itself, and then if we look at the past history and the past lives of Kaliya, and then if we want to look at the relationship in Kasyapa's family, and on a philosophical, mental, intellectual platform, in order to absorb ourselves in the pastimes of the Lord, we can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then there's on the platform of the emotions and desires. We can meditate on how is Kaliya feeling when Krishna is kicking him? How was Kaliya feeling when he fled and took shelter in the Yamuna? How did Kaliya feel when he's practically dead and he's hearing the prayers of his wives? How did he feel when he surrendered? How did he feel when Krishna said, I'm glad you're a surrendered devotee now, but you're going to have to leave? Imagine that. You finally surrender to Krishna, and he's like, sorry, can't stay in the temple anymore now that you fully surrendered. You're scaring everybody. How did the Nagapatnis feel? How did they feel when, they're married to this demon? And they're, Krishna's dancing on Kaliya's heads, and they're thinking, I hope our husband dies and we can stay as widows in Vrindavan. And then they shift, and they see their husband shifting. And then they decide, oh no, let's go, hurry up. Our husband has shifted his mentality, and now he's going to die. How did they feel? How did the children feel? They brought their children with them also. How did the residents of Vrindavan, how did Garuda feel? There's a number of statements in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu about how Garuda was feeling watching this battle between Krishna and Kaliya, and knowing that he couldn't interfere, that Krishna would be angry if he interfered. What was the mood of Garuda? And what was the mood of the residents of Vrindavan in the Kaliya pastimes, of Balaram, of Rohini, who was sent back to cook? How we can go into those emotions, and we could spend months just mining the emotions of each of the personalities in this Leela. And then we have kind of the side personalities like Sobari Muni. I was recently again reading in the Bhagavatam about Sobari Muni, how, he offends Garuda, and then he gets bewildered by the fish, and then he uses yogic power to make himself young, and marries 50 princesses and has, 5,000 children, and then he just says, what am I doing? And he surrenders to Krishna and takes all of his family members with him back to Godhead. How was he feeling? What were his emotions? What was he going through? And to start to identify with these emotions. It's very nice in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in the Southern Ocean, at the very end, in the fifth wave of the Southern Ocean, when Rupa Goswami is talking about the Staibabs, he brings up the point that in ordinary life, if you're hearing a story or you're watching you're watching a play, you're watching some kind of a drama, or you're hearing a poetic narration, that you can enter into the feelings of the characters. We've all had this experience with mundane stories, isn't it? You hear a story or you watch a story and you enter into the emotions of the characters. And he makes the point that in that case, rasa only exists, material rasa only exists in the audience, because the story is mundane, the characters are mundane, and the actors or the reciter is mundane. And so there's not any rasa there. You know, the person acting in a drama of ordinary persons, they're just doing it again for money or for fame or whatever. But he said this same principle operates on a transcendental level with narrations of Krishna, so that when we're hearing poetry, like the Bhagavatam is all poetry, or we're seeing this enacted, let's say we were seeing this enacted, the Kaliya pastime enacted, or the gopis imagining that they're Krishna being enacted. Rupa Goswami says very clearly, and Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also reiterate, that the hearer or the watcher can experience the emotions of those devotees. So if we're hearing this pastime of the gopis, just think about this a little bit. So the gopis are feeling Krishna's emotions, and we hearing this can experience the gopis' emotions, according to Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami. We can enter into their emotions, just like we can enter into the emotions in some mundane drama. We've all had that experience. Read a book, watch a movie, watch a play, or hear somebody tell us a story. So this is true millions of times over with the transcendence. Because in the narration or in the drama, those personalities are actually present. If I'm watching a movie of Superman, first of all, there is no Superman. And second of all, that Superman is not present. It's just an actor. It's just devices. But if I'm watching a drama of Krishna, Krishna's present. Krishna's infusing those actors with his presence. And when I'm reading the Bhagavatam, Krishna's actually present. I mean, that's like Krishna's present when I say Krishna. Krishna's present in the deity. He's actually there. It's not just, an ordinary thing that I, say the name of some ordinary person and they're not there. Or I watch some ordinary drama and they're not there. And so one can enter into their emotions. But that can happen also on the platform of the mind. Now, when one is realized that one is not the body and the mind, as Prabhupada writes again in the 3rd canto, that living yoga, he says there's no question of using the mind. That the Ladini Shakti enters the heart, and the pastimes are taking place in the heart. Prabhupada says it's like spiritual television. And again, it's really those people. It's not like watching a television where you're just watching some colors on a screen, and the colors on a screen are representing actors who aren't really the characters, and the characters are also fiction. It's not that. It's that the pastimes are really taking place in the heart. Why not? Krishna's in the heart. Right? Hridaya Junatistati, Krishna's in the heart. If Krishna's there, all of his associates are there, all of his pastimes are there. And then one is not just experiencing the plot and the philosophy and the emotions on the platform of mind intelligence, what to speak of not just experiencing it on the gross platform, but one is experiencing it actually on the level of the soul. And of course, at the final stage of meditation, one sees the Lord not just in the heart, but face to face. Just like there was this reporter asking Srila Prabhupada, are you communicating with God? And Rameshwar is there, and he said, yes, Krishna is in the heart, and Krishna is in the scripture, and he's giving Srila Prabhupada dictation. And Prabhupada said, no, I am seeing Krishna face to face at every moment. So this is the platform on which the gopis are functioning. Even though Krishna is ostensibly not there, even though they're in separation from Krishna, they're seeing him so much that they feel a oneness with him, and they're experiencing his emotions so much that they're experiencing those emotions as if they are him. This happens between the devotees and each other also. Like in many of the works of the acharyas, the gopis, they know, they feel what the other gopis are thinking and feeling. We see this in the Pearl pastime, right, where Srimati Radharani is hiding and her friends, Lalita and so forth, they're speaking on behalf of Radha, but they're able to know what Radha is thinking and what Radha is feeling because they can feel it as their own. Again, we have some indication of this in this world. If I'm very close to someone in this world, I may have some sense of what they're thinking and feeling, even at a distance. I mean, we've all had the experience that we think of someone and then instantly they call us on the phone. Yes, everyone's had that experience. Or we call someone and they say, I was just thinking of you. It happened to me just the other day. Somebody called me and I said, I was just picking up the phone to call you. Right? Or we're very close to someone. We just have this sense, this connection. Or when someone dies, that's also very common. Someone dies in the family and a person in a distant place says, oh, Grandpa just died. So if that's true for us, then we can just imagine how true that is for liberated souls in love of Krishna. So this is what we are supposed to do. This is how we move from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness. And I was just thinking, I think this is one of my favorite verses, but I think about it quite a lot, where Krishna says, Yam yam vapi smrambhavam tajachante kaleram tam tam evaitikante asaratad bhava bhavita. Whatever we think about when we die has a huge impact on determining our next birth. I mean, our next birth is also determined by what we've done during our life, what karma we've accumulated, and so forth. But that time of death, the thoughts are very important, because at that time, it's kind of a intensification of what we really want. And Eko Bahinam Yo Vedadati Kaman. Krishna, from the beginning of time, has been giving the living entities what they want. I give the example all the time. Here, many years ago, the children were on a field trip. When we came back, there was an apartment on fire, what used to be called Flint Ridge. One of the apartment buildings were on fire. And the kids wanted to see, so we stopped and we saw. And it was a half an hour before we could go close. It was the fire. It was so big. And we saw one young woman barefoot outside of her apartment with her 3 children. As we were there, the husband came from work. And it's like, you know, your house is on fire. You don't put on your shoes. You don't grab your wallet. You don't grab the photographs of your family. You don't grab your heirloom silverware. You grab your children. So at the time of death, we mentally grab whatever is most important to us, whatever has been absorbing our consciousness. Once heard Vanumar say, if while you chant Hare Krishna on a regular basis, you're thinking of other things, then even if you chant Hare Krishna at the time of death, you'll actually be thinking about other things. And we see this, you know, we see, and I've fallen into this myself, where we're ostensibly devotees following the process, but our thoughts and our emotions are churning with things that are not really Krishna. And we may say they're Krishna-related, but they're not. This person offended me. This person did this terrible thing. This has to be fixed. This. And so how does Krishna say to be absorbed? He says in the next verse, 8:7, Mam anusmram yujyacha. Think of me while you fight. I have trouble thinking of Krishna if someone attacks me verbally. Krishna says in the 11th canto to Uddhava that even a sadhu cannot resettle his mind after hearing harsh words that pierce the heart when spoken by uncivilized men. And it says that the harsh words that enter the ear and pierce the heart, they hurt more than physical arrows. I have difficulty thinking of Krishna when uncivilized people speak harsh words to me. Krishna says that. He says even sadhus cannot resettle their minds. But I was thinking, Arjuna, people were not just speaking harsh words to him, they were actually trying to kill him. Somebody who insults me, I did have one person try to kill me once. But people who insult me, they're not usually trying to kill me. And still, Krishna says, remember me. Always remember me. So this should be our absorption. Physically, we should be expanding the glories of the Lord by what we do on a physical, external level. Are we always trying to improve Srila Prabhupada's society and Mahaprabhu's mission? But with meditation on Krishna, whether it's, making the broken toilets work, or and fixing the peeling paint, or, now we're putting up Bhagavad Gita verses on the property. On the physical level, and then on the mental level, through philosophy, through understanding. And on the emotional level, by connecting with what we're reading in the Shastra, not just in terms of plot, and not even just terms of philosophy, but in terms of how were they feeling? How were these gopis feeling in separation? I was thinking the other day how, people like to have videos of animals who are so happy to see their owners after a long time. I'm sure some of you have seen that. The guy comes back from being in the military, the dog hasn't seen him for 2 years, and the dog goes crazy. The animal was feeling such separation from their owner. How much separation should I be feeling from Krishna? How much is the gopis feeling from Krishna? So much so. There's so much separation. They're so absorbed that they fully feel Krishna. And if we do that, then the Lord and his devotees and his Shaktis will say, oh, here is someone using their body, their thinking, their feeling, their willing to be absorbed in me, even on battlefields, even in difficulty. What's a greater difficulty than fighting on a battlefield with your grandfather and your guru? I just don't think it can get worse than that. And seeing seeing Abhimanyu be killed. How does it get more distressful than that? And still, in everything in life, in the happiness and distress, expanding as much as we can with our body and thoughts and feelings, then the Lord is attracted, like Lord Kapila Dev says. It's like it acts as a hook that attracts a fish. And then Krishna comes and he says, oh, you're always thinking of me? Let me show you who I am. And then he actually manifests in the heart. And then whatever misconceptions or misunderstandings, it all becomes cleared. And then we really, truly connect with these spiritual emotions. These real, not that, now in our material life we have perversions of Vyavitari bhavs, or we have some mixed material and spiritual. But if we use that in Krishna's service, then eventually these different bhavas also will fill us. And we will enter into these pastimes in reality. And then we will actually be there experiencing these leelas ourselves. So questions, comments, additions, subtractions. Yes, Rudrani.
Just that one point, when you have lines, right, verses, and each word can be transformed into so many different, divided into many different ways with so many different meanings. Just one.
Just one word,
so
yes.
So you just put a few words together, and exponential is unlimited.
Well, think of the Atmarama verse. The Atmarama verse is such a good example of that, where, I think Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gave 9 explanations, and then Mahaprabhu gave 61. Was that correct? 61? And even just the word cha. He was using the word cha, which just means and or also. Yes. And many times we'll see in the Tika of the Acharyas, like we see in Sanatana Goswamis and Jiva Goswamis particularly, they're saying, well, this can mean this, and it can also mean this, and it can also mean this, and it can also mean this. Yeah.
So what to say? What to say? Just one word.
Just one word.
It brings us to an unlimited degree of experience about the whole process and everything in it. It's
Thank you.
Unfathomable, and it's completely achintya.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.